Hello. Come on in. Get comfortable. I want to talk to you about something. Not as a doctor. Not yet. Just as a woman who has been through it. I want to tell you about the most frightening time in my life. It didn't happen in a hospital operating room or on a stormy night. It happened on a sunny Tuesday afternoon in my own kitchen. I couldn't find my car keys. Simple as that. I'd checked my purse, the counter, the little bowl by the door, and as I kept searching, this feeling started in my chest. It was a heat, a pressure, a wave of rage, so pure and so hot that I had to physically grip the edge of the granite counter to keep from screaming over a set of keys. I looked at my own hands, my knuckles white, and thought, who is this person? Later, that same week, I was leading grand rounds with a group of medical students, something I've done 1,000 times. And I was talking about a common cardiac procedure, and the name of the procedure just vanished. It was gone. I stood there in front of all those bright young faces, and my mind was a total, silent, terrifying blank. The silence in that room felt deafening. The worst part, though, was the night. I'd wake up, almost always around 3 a.m., and my heart would just be pounding in my ears. You know that feeling? It wasn't because of a nightmare. I wasn't scared of anything. I was just scared. A deep, vibrating hum of anxiety that had no name, no reason. It just was. For a while, I tried to diagnose myself. I'm a doctor, after all. Was it stress? Was I working too hard? Was it early onset dementia? The thought was so cold, so terrifying, I could barely let it form. In those moments, I was convinced I was losing my mind, that the intelligent, calm, capable woman that I had spent a lifetime building was just gone, evaporated, replaced by an angry, anxious, forgetful stranger. If any of that, the rage over nothing, the mental blanks, that nameless dread in the middle of the night, if any of it sounds even vaguely familiar, then I need you to stop what you're doing and hear me. Take a deep breath. You are not going crazy. You are not broken. And you are absolutely not alone in this. This is the conversation I wish someone had had with me back then when I was standing in my kitchen, terrified of my own anger. This is the podcast I needed. So, here's my promise to you today. We're going to pull back the curtain on this whole experience. We're going to explore what is really happening inside our bodies and our brains. We're going to talk about the anxiety, the irritability, the brain fog, not in cold, clinical terms, but in the real language of our lived experience. We're going to give it a name, and we are going to understand it.
And it's really important that you stay with me all the way through to the end, because after we understand the why, which is so validating, I'm going to share the how. I'm going to lay out the complete action plan I personally used to find my way back. It's a real-world, tactical toolkit for calming the storm. The solutions are the most critical part, and you've waited long enough to feel better, so please, don't miss them. I am so thrilled we're starting this journey together. This is the very first episode of the Essential Health podcast, and I truly believe these conversations can be life-changing. Are you ready? Let's begin.
So, where does a storm like this even begin? For most of us, it doesn't start with the mood swings. It starts with the body. Little betrayals. Things just changing. I remember the first time it happened to me. I was 46, in a big crowded conference hall listening to a lecture. And out of nowhere, a wave of heat started in my chest. It felt like someone had opened an oven door right in front of me. It crept up my neck, into my face. My heart started to pound. I thought I was having a panic attack, or maybe even a heart attack. I fanned myself with my program, trying to look casual, but inside I was terrified. And just as quickly as it came, it was gone, leaving me feeling chilled and, frankly, a little foolish. That was my first real introduction to the world of perimenopause. And that word, perimenopause, it's so clinical. I prefer to think of it differently. Think of your life hormonally as a long, beautiful day. Your 20s and 30s are high noon. The sun is bright, strong, predictable. But perimenopause, that's the long, gradual sunset. It's not night yet, not by a long shot, but the light is changing. It's becoming golden, unpredictable. The shadows get longer. It's a period of immense beauty, but also of immense chaos. It is not a sudden flick of a switch. It's a slow, unfolding transition that can last for years. What's happening is that your ovaries, which have been these reliable, steady producers of your key hormones for decades, start getting ready for retirement. But they don't just clock out one Friday and disappear. They start working erratically. One month, they'll flood your system with estrogen. The next, they'll barely produce any. And progesterone, our calming, balancing hormone, begins a slow, steady decline. This hormonal chaos, this unpredictability, is what kicks off these strange new physical symptoms. And the most famous one, the one that makes us all feel like we're walking cliché, is the hot flash. So let's talk about that wave of heat. What is that really? Why does it feel so intense, so out of control? Deep in your brain, you have a little almond-sized structure called the hypothalamus. You can think of it as your body's master thermostat, or the mission control for your internal environment. Its job, day in and day out, is to keep your core temperature hovering in a very narrow, very safe range. Now, for decades, estrogen has been like a trusted advisor to this mission control. It kept it calm, stable, and well-calibrated. It gave your thermostat a wide, forgiving comfort zone. You could drink a hot coffee, walk into a warm room, feel a moment of stress, and your thermostat would barely notice. It would say, "No problem, just a minor fluctuation, we're all good here." But as your estrogen levels start to go on that perimenopausal roller coaster, the thermostat loses its trusted advisor. It becomes jumpy, anxious. It's like an incredibly sensitive smoke alarm that used to let you burn the toast, but now goes off if you just light a candle. That comfortable, wide temperature zone it used to have, it shrinks. It becomes incredibly narrow. So now that same cup of hot coffee or that same moment of stress is enough to push you just outside this new tiny comfort zone. And your mission control, now unsupervised and jumpy, doesn't see a minor fluctuation. It sees a 5-alarm fire. It screams, "Emergency! We are overheating! Initiate immediate cool-down protocol!" And your body is incredibly efficient. It has a very powerful cool-down system. First, it triggers vasodilation. That's a fancy word for opening up all the blood vessels near the surface of your skin to dump heat as fast as possible. That is the intense, creeping wave of red, that flash that you feel on your chest and face. At the same time, it opens the floodgates of your sweat glands. Your body is trying to drench you in a cooling liquid. At night, we call them night sweats. I used to wake up convinced I had spilled a glass of water on my t-shirt. It was that soaked. And of course, after your body stages this massive, over-the-top cooling event, you're left shivering and cold. So when this happens to you, when you're in that meeting or in that crowded room and you feel that heat start to rise, I want you to change the story you tell yourself. You're not broken. You're not malfunctioning. Your body is just trying to protect you based on faulty information from a very anxious, overreactive mission control. And once you know that, you can stop feeling scared of it and start learning how to calm it down.
So we've talked about that physical chaos, the hot flashes, the night sweats, the fatigue, and it can feel so overwhelming. For a long time, I thought the only answer was to just manage the symptoms one by one. But I have to tell you about the tool I found in my own journey that helped me address the foundation underneath it all. I want to be very clear. This is the product that I personally use after doing a tremendous amount of research. It's called Menorescue. And when I first looked into it, I was skeptical, as I always am. But I was so impressed by the intelligence of its formulation. It's not just about patching the symptoms, it's about hormonal balance. It has maca, which is fantastic for that heavy feeling of fatigue and for supporting your natural energy levels. But the real genius, from my scientific perspective, is its inclusion of ingredients like DIM and sulforaphane. These are powerful compounds that help your body to effectively process and balance estrogen. Essentially, they help smooth out that chaotic hormonal roller coaster we talked about, which can calm down the hot flashes and night sweats at their source. I started taking it, and it became my non-negotiable foundational support. It was the turning point that allowed all my other healthy habits to finally stick and be effective. And here's why I'm so excited to be telling you this right now. I reached out to the team at Menorescue, and they've put together an incredible offer just for our podcast community. It's truly exceptional. Here's the breakdown. You can, of course, try one bottle, but the real value starts with the bundles. If you choose the 3-bottle package, you get a great discount, and they include 2 free ebook bonuses. One is called Revitalize, The Secrets to Ageless Hair, Skin, and Nails, and the other is The Pleasure Principles, A Woman's Guide to Boosting Libido. But the best offer, and my personal recommendation, is the 6-bottle package. With this, you get the absolute lowest price per bottle, you get both those bonuses, plus a 3rd bonus guide on libido, and they give you free shipping on the entire order. This is a rare opportunity to get a full 6-month supply of foundational support with all the tools you need at the best possible value. I've put a special link for you right at the top of the description below. Just click that link to see all the details of these discounted bundles and the free bonuses. Okay, so while that foundational support is working in the background, let's turn our attention to this storm inside our own heads.
All right, we've talked about the body, the hot flashes, the night sweats, the things you can physically feel. But now we need to talk about the part of this journey that can feel so much more frightening, the part that happens in the quiet of your own mind. The anxiety, the sudden shocking rage, the feeling that your brilliant, reliable brain has been replaced by a foggy, forgetful imposter. This is where we feel the most isolated. This is where we start to ask ourselves that terrifying question, am I going crazy? I am here to tell you, with all my authority as a physician and all my conviction as a woman who has lived this, you are not. What you are experiencing is not a personality failure. It is a biological event, a predictable, explainable chemical event. To understand it, we need to go inside your brain's emotional control room. For most of your life, this room has been run by a perfect 4-person crew. They were so good, so efficient, you never even knew they were there. But now, the entire team is in the middle of a massive, chaotic leadership shuffle. Let's meet them, and let's understand what's happening to them. First, let's talk about the crew chief, your chief diplomat and head of operations, estrogen. We have a tendency to put estrogen in a box. We think of it as the period and pregnancy hormone. But that's like saying the sun's only job is to create a sunrise. In your brain, estrogen's most critical role is to keep the peace. It's a master regulator.
Its primary job in the control room is to manage the supply chain of your most important mood molecule, serotonin. You've heard of serotonin. We call it the feel-good chemical, but that doesn't do it justice. Serotonin is your brain's emotional shock absorber. It's your resilience. It's your capacity to handle life. Imagine you're driving and someone cuts you off, nearly causing an accident. If your serotonin levels are healthy and high, your reaction is probably, whoa. Your heart races for a second, but then you take a deep breath, your rational brain takes over, and you think, what a jerk, and you move on with your day. That ability to recover quickly, that's serotonin. It absorbed the shock. Now imagine the same situation with low serotonin. The same car cuts you off, but now you don't recover. The anger doesn't fade. It boils. You lean on the horn, you yell, your heart pounds for the next 20 minutes. You get to your destination and you're still replaying it, still fuming. You feel personally attacked. That is the feeling of having no shock absorbers. That is a brain low on serotonin. And a brain with fluctuating estrogen has a deeply unreliable serotonin supply chain. Next, let's talk about the crew member who works the night shift. Your guardian, your head of security, progesterone. If estrogen is the daytime diplomat, progesterone is the nighttime peacekeeper. It is your body's natural Valium. It's a profoundly calming agent. Its primary job is to interact with your brain's GABA receptors. That's a fancy way of saying its job is to walk through your nervous system at the end of a long day and tell it to power down. It's the hormone that turns off the buzzing, anxious lights of your mind. It unlocks the door to deep, restorative sleep, the kind of sleep where your body and brain actually heal. When your progesterone levels are high, you feel a sense of groundedness. You can fall asleep and, more importantly, stay asleep. Even if you wake up to use the bathroom, you can fall right back to sleep because your nervous system is still in that calm, settled state. I remember the exact moment I realized my progesterone was gone. I woke up, as usual, around 3 a.m. And I didn't just feel awake. I felt wired, alert. My heart was thumping. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the wind outside. Every tiny sound felt amplified. My body was exhausted, but my brain was on high alert, scanning for threats. That is the feeling of a nervous system with no guardian, no peacekeeper to tell it that it is safe to stand down. Now we need to talk about the crew member who is suddenly left in charge of everything. Cortisol. Cortisol is your alarm technician. It is your stress hormone, the chemical engine of your fight or flight response. Its job is to be explosive, to flood your system with energy to survive a genuine threat. In the healthy control room, cortisol is mostly quiet. Estrogen, the diplomat, is constantly reassuring it. Progesterone, the guardian, is keeping it calm. Cortisol is told time and time again, thanks for being ready, but this is not an emergency. It's just a traffic jam. It's just a long line at the grocery store. Stand down. But think about what happens when the diplomat starts missing work and the guardian retires completely. Cortisol is now alone in the control room, surrounded by flashing lights it doesn't understand. It's jumpy, it's anxious, it's unsupervised. Its job is to look for threats, and now with no one to tell it anyways, everything looks like a threat. The phone ringing unexpectedly isn't just a call, it's an alarm that makes you jump out of your skin. A deadline at work isn't just a project, it's a life and death crisis that wakes you up at night. Your baseline state becomes one of high alert. You feel chronically stressed even when nothing is wrong. Your shoulders live up by your ears. That's a body running on unsupervised cortisol. It is profoundly, profoundly exhausting. So now, let's put it all together. This is the chemical cascade that creates the strong. Estrogen drops, so your serotonin supply plummets. Your emotional shock absorbers are gone. So suddenly a small comment from your partner doesn't just annoy you, it enrages you. You have no buffer left. At the same time, progesterone disappears. Your calming agent is gone, so you can't sleep deeply. You lie awake at night, your mind racing, your nervous system on high alert. And because you're not sleeping well and your serotonin is low, your body perceives this as a state of chronic crisis, so your alarm technician cortisol starts pumping out stress hormone all day long. This high cortisol not only makes you feel anxious and wired, it also contributes to brain fog and makes it harder for you to access memories. Do you see? It is all connected. The anger, the anxiety, the sleeplessness, the forgetfulness, they are not separate problems. They are all symptoms of this same profound internal leadership shuffle. You are not failing. Your body is just trying to navigate an entirely new chemical reality. And once we truly understand that, we can stop blaming ourselves and start giving our body the new kind of support it so desperately needs.
Okay, of all the parts of the emotional storm, this is the one that I think can feel the most frightening, because it's the one that robs us of our peace, of our rest. Let's talk about anxiety. But I want to be very specific. I'm not talking about the kind of anxiety where you're nervous about a job interview or a big life event. That's a normal human emotion. The anxiety of perimenopause is a different beast entirely. For so many of us, it shows up in two distinct ways. The first is what I call the internal hum. It's a constant, low-grade vibration of unease that sits in your chest. It's the background static to your entire day, making everything feel just a little more dangerous, a little more fragile. You're not necessarily worried about anything, you just feel worried. It's a feeling without a cause, which is what makes it so crazy-making. The second, and for me, the more brutal version, is the 3 a.m. wake-up call. Does this sound familiar to you? You fall asleep, exhausted, and then, like clockwork, between 2 and 4 in the morning, your eyes snap open. You are not just awake, you are alert. Your heart is thumping in your chest, and your mind instantly starts racing. It's like a switch has been flipped from deep sleep to 5-alarm emergency in a single second. I used to lie there in the dark, my husband sleeping peacefully next to me, and my mind would just spin. It would be a high-speed highlight reel of every mistake I'd ever made, every worry I had about my children, every unfinished task on my to-do list. But it was more than that. It was a physical feeling, a feeling of dread. I would become convinced I'd left the stove on or that a patient's lab result I'd checked 3 times was wrong. The feeling was completely irrational, but it felt absolutely real. It felt like I was unsafe in my own home, in my own body. For years, I fought it. I would try to reason with myself. I'd say, Anya, you are a doctor. You are a rational person. There is nothing to be worried about. Go back to sleep. And it never ever worked. In fact, it often made it worse because I was trying to solve a physiological problem with a psychological argument. It's like trying to fix a flat tire by honking the horn. Here's what is actually happening in your body in that 3 a.m. moment. This is the direct result of that progesterone retirement we talked about. Remember, progesterone is your head of night security. Its job is to keep your nervous system in a calm, rest and digest state while you sleep. When progesterone levels plummet, you lose that protective, calming blanket. So now your nervous system is left exposed. It becomes incredibly sensitive to your cortisol, the alarm technician. During a normal sleep cycle, your cortisol naturally has a very small spike in the early hours of the morning to prepare you to wake up in a few hours. But without progesterone to keep it in check, that tiny normal spike now feels like a massive surge. It's enough to hit the panic button and flood your system with adrenaline. That's why you jolt awake. That's why your heart is pounding in your chest. Your body is physically in fight or flight mode. It is a biological event, not a mental failing. So what do? If we can't reason with it, how do we handle it? We have to speak the body's language. We need to send a signal back to the nervous system that says, false alarm, we are safe. The most powerful tool I have ever found for this is a mindfulness technique called grounding. When your mind is racing with anxiety, it is living entirely in the future, in the land of what-ifs.
Grounding is the practice of pulling your awareness, forcefully if you have to, back into the present moment, back into the physical reality of your body. It anchors you. I want to walk you through it right now. It's called the 5-4-3-2-1 method. You can do this without even moving from your bed. The next time you wake up with that jolt of panic, the first thing you do is open your eyes. Don't fight the thoughts. Just shift your focus and begin. 5. Silently in your mind, name 5 things you can actually see. Don't just glance. Really see them. I can see the rectangular shape of the window. I can see the moonlight making a pattern on the curtain. I can see the outline of the lamp on the nightstand. I can see the glass of water. I can see the texture of my own blanket. Take your time with each one. 4. Now bring your awareness to 4 things you can physically feel. I can feel the soft fabric of my pillowcase on my cheek. I can feel the weight of the duvet on my legs. I can feel the cool night air on my arms. I can feel my own heartbeat, and I'm just going to notice it without judgment. 3. Now listen. Name 3 things you can hear. This might be hard, so listen closely. I can hear the quiet hum of the house. I can hear the sound of my own breathing, in and out. Maybe I can hear the faint sound of a car passing far away. 2. Now engage your sense of smell. Name 2 things you can smell. I can smell the clean scent of the laundry detergent on my sheets. I can smell the faint dusty scent of the book on my nightstand. And finally, 1. Bring your awareness to your sense of taste. Name 1 thing you can taste. It might just be the neutral taste in your own mouth, or, and this is what I started doing, you can take a very slow, very deliberate sip of the water that you now always keep by your bed and focus only on the feeling and taste of that water. By the time you have completed the cycle, something in your body has shifted. Your heart rate has slowed, your breathing has deepened, you have successfully sent a powerful message from your senses directly to your nervous system. A message that says, we are not being chased by a tiger. We are here. We are in a safe room. We can stand down. You have anchored your ship in the middle of the storm. This isn't a one-time fix. It's a practice. It's a skill you build. It's a tool you keep in your toolkit, ready for when the alarm goes off. And over time, as you practice this, you do more than just manage the panic. You teach your nervous system that it doesn't need to be on high alert all the time. You teach it that it is, in fact, safe. All right, we've talked about the quiet anxiety of the night. Now, we need to bring our conversation into the light of day to talk about the loudest, most shocking, and perhaps the most shamed symptom of all, rage. And let's be very clear about the word I'm using. I am not talking about simple irritability. I'm not talking about being cranky because you had a bad day or you're tired. I am talking about a sudden, shocking, white-hot flash of fury that feels completely disconnected from the trigger. It feels alien. It feels like it comes from a place you don't recognize inside yourself because, in a way, it does. I told you before about my moment with the coffee cup, but I didn't tell you the whole story. I felt that surge of rage so intense it made my vision tunnel for a second, and I didn't scream. I was a doctor, a professional, so I held it in. I walked over to the dishwasher, opened it with such force the plates rattled, slammed the cup inside, and closed it with a deafening bang. My husband was in the other room, and he called out, "Is everything okay in there?" And the shame that washed over me in that moment was 10 times worse than the rage. I leaned against the counter, my heart pounding, and I thought, what have I become? He didn't deserve that. This is not me. I spent the rest of the day walking on eggshells around my own emotions, terrified that the monster I just met would come back out. I want to ask you, honestly, does any part of that story ring a bell? Maybe for you, it wasn't a coffee cup. Maybe you found yourself yelling at the self-checkout machine in the grocery store because it said unexpected item in the bagging area. Maybe it was the sound of your child asking why for the 10th time, And you snapped with a ferocity that made you both freeze in shock. Maybe you were in traffic, and the rage you felt towards the driver in front of you was so intense, it felt like a physical force. And afterwards, the guilt, the shame, the confusion, it's just devastating. For years, we as women learn to manage our emotions. We learn to be patient, to be the peacemakers. And then in perimenopause, it feels like all of that training, all of that self-control just evaporates. And we are left blaming ourselves, thinking we've become angry, bitter people. But what if I told you it has almost nothing to do with your personality and everything to do with a sponge? Here's the analogy I want you to hold on to. I want you to imagine that your patience, your ability to cope with daily frustrations, is a literal sponge. For most of your life, thanks to stable estrogen keeping your serotonin levels high, you've had a big, thick, absorbent sponge. It can soak up a lot of spills throughout the day, like a rude email, a kid who won't put on their shoes, a forgotten appointment, and it doesn't get saturated. At the end of the day, you can wring it out, you rest, and you start fresh the next morning with a healthy, absorbent sponge. But what happens in perimenopause is what I call the serotonin cliff fall. As your estrogen levels become chaotic and decline, the supply chain for serotonin collapses. Your brain is getting a fraction of the coping chemical it's used to. So that big, thick, absorbent sponge, it's been replaced by a thin, flimsy little piece of paper towel. It gets saturated almost immediately. The first small spill of the day, the rude email, it soaks it completely. So now when the next thing happens, the coffee cup on the counter, the unexpected item in the bagging area, there is nowhere for that frustration to go. The paper towel is already dripping. It can't absorb one more drop. So you don't have a small reaction, you have a flood. The reaction is never, ever about the coffee cup. It's about the fact that your capacity to absorb frustration has been chemically depleted. I need you to let that sink in. The next time you have one of these moments, I want you to stop the loop of self-blame. The guilt we feel is because we think our reaction was wrong. But the reaction is just a symptom. The problem is the saturated sponge. And beating yourself up for having a saturated sponge is like being angry at your car for running out of gas. It doesn't help. What you need is not more self-control. What you need is a strategy to either protect your sponge or a way to wring it out before it floods. This is where the tactical tool comes in. It's a circuit breaker, a pattern interrupt that you must practice until it becomes second nature. It's the 3 R's: recognize, remove, and recenter. Let's walk through it slowly, like a fire drill. Step 1 is recognize. This is the hardest part, and it takes practice. You have to become a student of your own body. For me, the rage starts as a hot feeling in my throat and chest. For you, it might be a clenching in your jaw or a sudden racing heartbeat. The moment you feel that first physical sign, your new job is to create a new thought pattern. You have to internally say the words, wait, this is not me. This is a hormonal surge. Just naming it, identifying it as a biological event, creates a tiny, precious sliver of space between the feeling and the action. You are moving from being in the rage to being an observer of the rage. Step 2 is remove. This is non-negotiable. You must physically change your environment. If you stay in front of the trigger, the surge will win. The paper towel will flood. If it's your partner, you must hold up a hand and say, calmly but firmly, I need a minute. And then you must turn and walk into another room. The bathroom, the bedroom, the back porch, it doesn't matter. You have to break the line of sight. If it's an infuriating email, You push your chair back from the desk and stand up. You are physically removing your body from the source of that final drop. It's not about running away. It's about giving yourself the space to avoid a catastrophe. And step 3 is recenter. Now that you have 60 seconds of space, your only job is to reset your nervous system. Not to think about the argument, not to justify your anger. Your only job is to breathe. The most effective method is box breathing. It is what Navy SEALs use to stay calm under fire, and it will work for you over a coffee cup. It's simple. Breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. Hold your breath for a count of 4. Breathe out slowly through your mouth for a count of 4, and hold the empty breath for a count of 4. Do this 3 to 5 times. This rhythmic, controlled breathing does something magical. It pulls your brain out of the reactive, emotional fight-or-flight state and re-engages your rational, thinking prefrontal cortex. When you come back into the room after that minute, you will be a different person. The surge will have passed. The flood will have receded. You will be able to address the actual issue, the coffee cup, with the calm of someone who has a sponge that is no longer dripping all over the floor. One last thing on this. This is so important. What happens after? How do you repair the connection with a loved one you might have snapped at? The most powerful words I learned to use were, "I'm sorry for how I just reacted. My response was out of proportion, and that's not on you. I am navigating some intense hormonal shifts right now that are making my fuse incredibly short. Thank you for your patience as I learn to manage this." That's it. It's an explanation, not an excuse. It's honest, it's vulnerable, and it invites your partner to be on your team instead of feeling like they are the enemy.
All right. We've navigated the storms of anxiety and rage, but now we must talk about the fog that rolls in silently and can make us feel the most lost of all. Let's talk about brain fog. And let's be clear about what this is, because it is so much more than just simple forgetfulness. It's not just misplacing your keys more often. It is a fundamental change in the texture of your thoughts. It's trying to think through a thick, heavy blanket. It's the frustrating tip-of-the-tongue phenomenon, where you're grasping for a word you know, a person's name, the title of a movie, and it's just out of reach. It's losing your train of thought in the middle of a story you love to tell. It's a decline in your verbal fluency, your ability to be witty and sharp. For many of us, especially women who have built their lives and careers on being sharp, reliable, and intelligent, this can be the single most terrifying symptom of all. I told you about the moment I froze in front of my medical students, but the real story is what happened after. I got through the lecture, somehow, but for weeks afterwards, I lived with a cold knot of dread in my stomach. I started to doubt myself. Before every meeting, every patient consultation, I would over-prepare. Terrified I would go blank again. I started speaking less in group settings, afraid I'd lose my train of thought and look foolish. I was a physician and a teacher, and I began to fear that the core of who I was, my intellect, was eroding. The fog wasn't just in my head, it was starting to shrink my life. And I want to ask you, have you started to shrink your life because of this? Have you stopped raising your hand in meetings? Do you let your partner handle the complex planning for a vacation because the mental load just feels too heavy? Have you ever been in a conversation and instead of listening, you're just desperately hoping they don't ask you a direct question because you've lost the thread? You are not alone. This is not a sign of decline. It is a sign of a temporary communication breakdown. So, what is happening? Let's go back to our control room. We've established that estrogen is a master regulator. In this context, think of it as the head of air traffic control for your entire brain. Your brain is like the world's busiest airport with hundreds of thousands of signals, thoughts, memories, words, commands, taking off and landing every second. For decades, estrogen was the brilliant, calm, and efficient air traffic controller. It ensured every signal traveled at high speed on a clear pathway and landed on the correct runway without delay. The system was seamless. You thought of a word, and it appeared on your tongue instantly. You needed a memory, and it was retrieved. Now, in perimenopause, that air traffic controller starts getting unreliable. It's overworked, and the communication systems are full of static. So what happens to a busy airport when the control tower is struggling? Chaos. Signals get delayed. Thoughts are put into a holding pattern, circling and circling, which is that tip of the tongue feeling. Sometimes a signal gets routed to the wrong runway entirely, and you say a completely different word than you meant to say. And sometimes the fog is just so thick that the tower has to shut down a runway completely for a moment. That's when your mind goes completely blank. The most important thing I can tell you is this: the airplanes are not gone. Your memories, your intelligence, your vocabulary, they're all still safe in the hangar. This is not a problem with your brain's hard drive. It is a problem with the Wi-Fi. It is an issue of access and retrieval speed, not a loss of the data itself. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the cold, terrifying fear that whispers in our ears during these moments. Is this early onset dementia? Is this Alzheimer's? I need you to hear me clearly, as a physician. While you should always discuss any memory concerns with your doctor, the brain fog of perimenopause is clinically different from the cognitive decline of dementia. The brain fog I'm describing is variable. You have good days and bad days. You might be foggy in the morning and sharp in the afternoon. The memory loss is often about retrieval. You forget a name, but it comes to you 2 hours later. This is characteristic of a communication issue. It is characteristic of a spotty Wi-Fi problem. And unlike dementia, it is not a degenerative disease. It is a temporary state that we can actively work to improve. So, how do we do that? If the old communication pathways are congested and unreliable, the answer isn't to just keep trying to force traffic through them. The answer is to build new runways. This is the miracle of our brains, neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to reorganize itself, to form new neural connections. You are not stuck with the brain you have today. You can actively build a stronger, faster, more resilient brain. And the best way to do that is to give it a novel challenge. The key word here is novel. Doing this daily crossword you're already great at is like taking the same flight path over and over. To build a new runway, you have to force the brain to do something it finds difficult and unfamiliar. Let's build your Build a Better Brain toolkit. Number 1, learn a new language. This is the gold standard for neuroplasticity. The process of learning new vocabulary, new sentence structures, and new sounds forces your brain to build entirely new neural connections from the ground up. You don't need to be fluent. Just 10 minutes a day on an app like Duolingo or Babbel is a powerful act of brain construction. Number 2, learn a musical instrument. This is a full brain workout. It combines reading a symbolic language, listening intently, auditory processing, and using your hands in a precise way, fine motor skills. It is a symphony of neural activity that is incredibly powerful for building new connections. Number 3, get physical, but make it complex. Simple movement is great, but movement that also requires your brain to think is even better. Think about taking up dancing, where you have to remember steps and rhythm. Think about tennis, where you have to track a ball and plan your next move. Think about a complex yoga flow. This combines physical and mental effort, which is rocket fuel for neuroplasticity. And finally, let's be practical. Give yourself the gift of grace through outsourcing. While you are building your new, better brain, it's okay to admit that your short-term memory is not your most reliable employee right now. So, fire it. Outsource its job. Become a master of lists. Write everything down. Use the Notes app on your phone. Embrace your calendar. Every appointment, every birthday, every deadline goes into your digital calendar with multiple alerts. Find a home for your keys. Get a hook by the door or a specific bowl. Your keys live there now. Period. This isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of intelligence. You are creating systems to support your brain while it is undergoing a massive and important upgrade. You are not losing your mind. You are actively, consciously, and powerfully building a new one.
All right, we have been deep in the storm. We've talked about the anxiety, the rage, the brain fog, and we've talked about the specific in-the-moment tools like grounding and box breathing to help you survive those acute waves. But now we come to the most important work. Those tools are like life rafts. They're essential for when you find yourself thrown into a stormy sea. But the goal is not to get better at using a life raft. The goal is to build a stronger, more stable ship so you don't get thrown overboard as often. This is the work that changes everything in the long run. This is your action plan. I call them the 4 pillars of stability. The first, and without question the most impactful pillar, is nutrition. But I want you to erase the word diet from your mind. This is not about deprivation. It is not about counting calories. For a woman in this phase of life, the single most important nutritional concept is blood sugar balance. Remember our anxious, jumpy alarm technician cortisol? Nothing makes it hit the panic button faster than a blood sugar roller coaster. When you eat a meal that's all carbohydrates, like a pastry for breakfast or a big bowl of pasta for dinner, your blood sugar skyrockets. Your body releases a flood of insulin to handle it, which then causes your blood sugar to crash an hour or 2 later. To your brain, that crash feels like a 5-alarm emergency. It signals danger. So what does it do? It releases cortisol and adrenaline. The result? A wave of anxiety, a sudden hot flash, a feeling of irritability. Many of the mood swings and physical symptoms we blame on our hormones are actually being triggered, or at least made much worse, by this blood sugar chaos. I remember for years, I would have what I called the 3 p.m. slump. I'd be productive all morning, I'd have a sandwich or a salad for lunch, and then at 3 p.m., I would hit a wall. I'd feel irritable, foggy, and desperately crave something sweet. For years, I thought it was just a lack of willpower. I now know that was a classic blood sugar crash pouring gasoline on my perimenopausal fire. The solution is surprisingly simple, and it has nothing to do with restriction. It's about addition. At every single meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, your plate must contain 3 things: protein, healthy fat, and fiber. Protein is for satiety and muscle health. Think eggs, Greek yogurt, chicken, fish, tofu, lentils. Healthy fat is for hormone production and slowing down digestion. This is crucial. Think avocado, nuts, seeds, olive oil. And fiber, mostly from vegetables, also slows down digestion and feeds your gut. Think leafy greens, broccoli, berries, beans. When you eat this way, you create a slow, gentle, rolling hill of blood sugar, not a dramatic spike and crash. Your energy is stable, your mood is stable. You take away cortisol's favorite reason to smash the panic button. This one change is a profound act of self-care. It calms your entire system from the inside out.
The second pillar is movement. And again, we need a massive mindset shift here. Many of us were taught that the answer to weight gain or stress is to go pound the pavement. Long, punishing cardio sessions. In perimenopause, that can be one of the worst things you can do. Intense, long-duration cardio can actually raise your cortisol levels. If you're already running on a full tank of stress, adding more physical stress can just make things worse. It can worsen the fatigue, the sleep disruption, and even the weight gain around your middle. The new priority is not to punish your body, but to build it. Your focus must shift to strength training. I cannot overstate how important this is. When you lift heavy things, whether it's weights at a gym, your own body weight with push-ups and squats, or using resistance bands, you are doing two magical things. First, you are building and maintaining lean muscle. Muscle is your metabolic engine. The more muscle you have, the more calories you burn, even when you're just sitting here listening to me. It is the single most effective way to combat the metabolic slowdown of this life stage. Second, you are protecting your bones. Estrogen was one of the primary guardians of your bone density. As it declines, our risk for osteoporosis skyrockets. Strength training puts a positive stress on your bones, signaling them to stay strong and dense. It is your best defense against fractures down the line. I used to be a runner. I thought that was the definition of fit. Now I lift weights 3 times a week, and I've never felt stronger or more stable. Complement this with calming movement. A simple 20-minute walk outside every day is not just exercise. It's a cortisol management strategy. The gentle movement, the fresh air, the sunlight, it is a powerful signal to your nervous system to stand down from high alert. The third pillar is what I call mindful pauses. This is not a luxury. In this phase of life, it is a medical necessity. Your nervous system is now by default calibrated to a fight or flight state. We have to intentionally, consciously practice putting it into a rest and digest state. If you are a busy, capable woman like I was, the idea of stopping in the middle of the day to do nothing can feel absurd, unproductive. But I want you to reframe it. These pauses are the most productive thing you can do because they are a targeted intervention to lower your cortisol. I made a non-negotiable contract with myself. Twice a day, once around 10 a.m. and once around 3 p.m., I would schedule a 5-minute nervous system reset into my calendar. This is not scrolling on your phone. It is not answering one last email. It is 5 minutes of deliberate disconnection. You can do it anywhere. In your office chair, in your parked car. Find a quiet corner. Close your eyes, and for 5 minutes, your only job is to focus on your breath. Don't try to stop your thoughts. Just let them drift by. And keep bringing your focus back to the physical sensation of the air entering your nose and leaving your mouth. That's it. It sounds impossibly simple, but what you are doing is practicing the art of moving from the chaotic, reactive part of your brain to the calm, observant part. You are training your nervous system, like a muscle, to know the path back to safety. After a few weeks of this, you will notice that your baseline state is just calmer. Your sponge is a little thicker. Your fuse is a little longer. It is profoundly effective. And this brings us to the final and crucial pillar, professional help. Please hear me on this. You do not have to, and you should not have to, do this alone. For decades, the medical establishment frankly failed women in this area. We were told to just get through it. That is no longer acceptable. The single most empowering thing you can do is to build your support team. First, consider finding a therapist or a counselor. The emotional toll of this transition is real. The grief for the person you used to be, the fear of the future, the strain it can put on relationships, these are heavy things to carry. Having a neutral, compassionate space to talk through those feelings is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of profound strength and self-awareness. Second, and this is non-negotiable, you must find a menopause literate doctor or practitioner. Not all doctors are. When you're looking for a new doctor or talking to your current one, you can ask them directly, what is your approach to perimenopause, and what are your thoughts on hormone therapy? Their answer will tell you everything you need to know. You deserve a healthcare partner who listens to you, one who validates your symptoms, one who will discuss all of your options with you, from lifestyle changes and targeted supplements like Menorescue, all the way to hormone therapy. You deserve a partner who sees you as a whole person and works with you to create a plan that allows you to feel vibrant, strong, and fully yourself. You are the CEO of your own health, and you are hiring your expert advisory board. Choose them wisely.
We started this conversation on a ship in a storm, tossed by waves of rage, blinded by the fog of confusion, and woken in the night by the thunder of our own anxious hearts. For a long time, it felt like we were just passengers on this vessel, helpless against a weather system we couldn't control. But I hope after our time together today, you can see the truth. The storm of perimenopause is real. The chaotic seas are real, but you are not a passenger. You are, and you have always been, the captain of your own ship. And now you have the navigational charts. You understand the weather patterns of your own brain chemistry. You have the tactical tools, the grounding techniques, the breathing exercises to secure the ship when a sudden wave fits. And you have the 4 pillars of stability to build a stronger, more resilient vessel for the long journey ahead. The storm does pass, and on the other side is not a diminished version of you, but a stronger one, a wiser one who has navigated a profound challenge and has emerged with a deeper understanding of her own body and her own strength. The sea on the other side is calmer, the light is clearer, and you are still at the helm. Now, the most powerful tool we have as we navigate these waters is each other. We are a fleet, not a collection of single ships. So please help us build this community. I would be so grateful if you would share your own story in the comments below. I have one simple question for you. Which part of our conversation today resonated most with you? Was it the internal hum of anxiety? Was it the saturated sponge of rage? Was it the air traffic control of brain fog? When you share your aha moment, you let another woman know that she is not alone. Your story is a lighthouse for someone else. Thank you, truly, for spending this time with me today. If you found this conversation helpful and want to continue this journey, please show your support by giving this episode a like and be sure to subscribe to the Essential Health Podcast so you don't miss our future episodes. Until then, please take good care of yourself. You've got this.